I did it. Hello again, guys. I am back. Sorry for my absence. Is the word? Yes. Right. We're back in PoE. New league is coming up, so there's gonna be a lot of videos, a lot of reactions. Today specifically, game balance in PoE. And specifically in the new game balance coming in the Expedition League. Yeah. First off, before we get into that, in regards to my absence, over time, I hope that we can make these videos more permanent. Also, when I'm not playing PoE and I do other content, I've been really enjoying EFT, Escape from Tarkov. In my time away from PoE and some other games. And as I find a way to more incorporate a style that I enjoy doing on a video format that I feel comfortable with, I'll start doing those. Until then, you can expect me to do this kind of content when I'm playing PoE. And then over time, we'll start adding, we'll add this, this style of video, the I did it videos, to my other stuff. Anyways, let's just get into it because there is a lot to cover. What I want to do here is I want to give you more like broadly my takes if you want to see the full thing of when I first reacted to it, which was yesterday. I'll link to the VOD and you can watch the VOD. Because there I go in more detail about everything and we have discussions along the way of what I think about certain things. But for now, I'll give you TLDRs, what I think is good, bad, and what's missing. Okay, so let's start out. First of all, they reiterate on some of the points they've already made from the live stream. Specifically here to start, we're talking about support gem reduction. So with the support gem reduction, what they're trying to do is they're trying to mainly, and this is really important because a lot of people are concerned about their build viability, is they're mainly trying to hit the top end, and especially whenever you hit your 6-link. And what they're trying to do as well with cutting down on this endgame damage is they're trying to make it so that players no longer without enough investment get to like one cycle guardians, bosses, and all this. It had been very much the case that in PoE you could, with a good build, expect to kill every single conqueror along all the way progressing within one cycle of flasks. That means within 6 seconds the conquerors just would be done. They would be dead. These are supposed to be endgame challenges, boss fights that are like breaking up the natural flow of mapping, and it just, I mean, imagine being designer for the game, making a cool boss with cool animations, and then the game ends up with a meta that just revolves around ignoring everything they do and just deleting the boss out of existence. So that's what this aims to do. What it also aims to do is it aims to make sure that the balance, as you can see here, they're upping some of the skills that are getting hit the hardest. So what they're doing is they're taking support gems and they're basically cutting away their overall more multipliers. And so in PoE, the more you stack multipliers, it has a compounding effect. So, the multiplier gets multiplied by the next multiplier that gets multiplied by the next multiplier. So the higher up you go in multipliers, 6, 7, 8 links, the higher, this starts, compounding and creates some like really impossible to balance scenarios for PoE. So what we can expect is that 4 links in general are going to be close to even in power. Obviously, there are some skill balance changes as well, so not everything will be the same, but they won't be hit that much. They will be hit, but not by that much. And then especially 6 links will be hit. And I can attest that in SSF, even hardcore, you can make it in high tier red maps on like 4, preferably 5 links in the past. So we will be fine, since these are not going to be hit as hard. The game will be tougher, and there's more on that throughout this that where there are more there are more things you need to invest in with this whole balance change, but I'll cover that. So I think this is overall a good change. They've hit some supports harder, which is like the Warcry skills. They buffed some of the crit stuff, but that's because of the Flask nerf. And then they've nerfed Archmage, and then they're doing some balance passes on like mana overall, mana cost, and support viability. Overall, I think they're doing the right things towards support gems. Archmage will be a lot weaker. Slams, I mean, Seismic Cry is dead outside of memes, I would say. Melee, I think melee will be fine. Melee is very strong, and there are a lot of other things you can do in melee, like Lightning Strike last league. It's a perfectly viable build all the way through all of endgame. It had good, a good flow of progression. So there will definitely be builds out there. I heard people talking about General's Cry, and there's a lot of stuff that'll be fine. So don't worry too much about this. There'll be a meta shaping up, and if you are playing, you're just going to be playing on a more level playing field if you played some of these old meta builds. Flask rework is the next thing. So they're gonna add like some automation to flasks through a cost of enchanting your flask. So it'll make it a little bit weaker, but you can automate some of the stuff. You can also make it so that you can't gain charges while the flask is up, but then you buff the flask to gain some of its old power. They're basically nerfing the overall power of essentially all flasks to where we don't have a single flask that has as much power as a full slot in your gear. So a full set of flasks would be the same as a full set of gear in terms of power almost. They want to get away from that and have flask more as a moment-to-moment utility thing that you want to use but not rely on as much. I do think that Pathfinder will still find flask to be incredibly impactful, and they can probably use it as a like they can have full uptime with the right setup. I believe in boss fights, because Pathfinder has flask charges regenerating over time automatically, and what they're really hitting here is they're hitting the flask regeneration through killing enemies. It's mainly because in the past there were just not as many monsters on the screen when flasks were initially envisioned, and then over time they've given us so many more monsters to kill, even though people have a tendency to say that they never add anything to the game in terms of like power or any, I don't know, it's weird. But let's not digress on that or linger on that. So let's move on. Flask changes I think will overall be good. It'll be interesting to see how it shapes out. However, I feel like it's sort of skirting the issue a little bit. Hopefully it'll work out, but I fear that with like there'll be more of an emphasis again on flask charge belts and generating flask charges to the point where you can just permanently have a key set of flasks that people will figure out is the best set. Again, that'll then just be spammed the same way. I kind of think that we're gonna end up in that scenario again, and it'll be more about, well, you shouldn't map without having sextants on your maps, because then otherwise you can't have enough flask charges up, and there'll be like an evolving meta that'll like feed into the same scenario we have now. So I mean, obviously you can get the higher power with the can't generate while you have the flask running and all that, but I don't know. This flask system I think will require multiple iterations to hit the mark. I like that they're trying this, and it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out, but I have a feeling we'll get around it again. In this, from what I can see here, I think we'll figure a way around it. And one thing I think is important here, though, with Flask is that the permanent immunity doing Flasks is, by all intents and purposes, gone. So with curses, shock immunity, freeze immunity, bleed immunity, ignite, all these are, by all intents and purposes, gone. And I think that's a good thing. Back when they introduced this the first time around, which is like 6-7 years ago, it's a long time ago. that's when at least some of us realized that Flasks were OP, and we started building Flask regeneration and just putting this on everything. And as long as you were fast enough, you had immunity to all of this. And it was one of the biggest power creeps that PoE had ever seen, in my opinion. A lot of people didn't really recognize it, but I think it really was. And I think to this day, it really shows that, because a lot of people are like, but what do I do now? Like, you will immediately feel this in the game. You'll have to approach mapping differently now. Like, overcapping resist will be mandatory. Temp chains maps will again be something you don't do unless you have curse effect. I mean, you can do it if it's a great map and you don't really have a lot of currency. It's like I'm struggling on maps on currency. I really just want to like get this done. That kind of feel. But yeah, it'll be a big deal. They're changing basalt, which I think is a good thing. It's like more armor now. It's kind of cool for like armor builds. Those who actually want to like put more effort into those. Aquamarine Flask is really cool. It allows you to move while being frozen. It's the reduced effect of freeze. Conundrum is the stun flask, and I think a stun flask is actually really good to add to the game. I think that's interesting, because it'll make you not stun locked. You'll still be able to get stunned, so be careful with that. But I think it's a nice addition to the game. Gold Flask is a bit of a meme. I do think that generally rarity is slightly overlooked, but it's because there's just too much stuff dropping in the game currently. But it is really good for finding global uniques that have like global drops, and it's good to pop before a boss. But it's a very heavy cost on the flask, so don't expect too much use out of that. I think that all the Ellie flasks are gonna be incredibly powerful going forward. They see literally no nerfs, and I do think that the less damage taken from elements is wildly unappreciated. So I think that has a lot of potential. We get flask duration, and we get like ability to move hinders, like a new flask node. So the passive tree. One thing they're doing is they're actually moving a lot of stuff that is currently stuck on cluster jewels, and they're putting it on the passive tree and on items instead. And they're taking away power from cluster jewels, so you won't feel the necessity. This is especially for flasks and burn, ignites, and damage over time. You won't feel the same necessity for cluster jewels going forward, and I think that's a great move. Player ailment mitigation. So they're addressing ailments in overall by removing it completely from Inquisitor. They're removing it from Elementalist, I believe, and they're lowering it on Hierophant and Pathfinder and Raider to some extent. We'll see the exact numbers and the exact changes over time, but this has a big effect. Also, they're gonna, I think they're gonna significantly increase the investment you would have to do to reach immunity. So this has some good side effects of making uniques more interesting again. So what I mean about that is, for instance, we have the Elder Belt. I always forget the name, but it's the one that gives you stats. And then depending on your highest stats, it gives you immunities, Dream Fragments, what's the chest called? Impulsa. All these kind of things have like freeze immunity, ignore shock effects, and all that, and that is really powerful mechanics that were underappreciated because it was way too easy to just gain immunity. And by not having immunity, it'll change again moment to moment gameplay. You will start noticing freeze pulsers, you will start noticing high lightning damage monsters that can have a high shock effect, and yeah, running into a room with sparks and getting shocked for a high amount. It used to be very scary. These days, not so much. They're also changing like ailment thresholds for players since damage is going down, and I think that's really good. They want us to be able to take advantage of ailments in general as a further addition to our damage and our utility of our skills to make things feel more, you know, like a cold skill feels like a cold skill. It doesn't just feel like a damage application that is just happens to be cold, you know, where you just put on LE focus anyways or whatever because it's the highest damage multiplier. Obviously, like freezing has been fun and is fun for a long time, but they want more like shock and freeze and all these like ailments to have more of a foothold even against bosses as well. So I think that's really good. Poison, huge buff overall. Yes, Assassin took a big hit, and especially the hit a monster 8,000 times and watch the poison duration be for like an hour. That should be gone now because the duration is now kept at 100. So you can only get 100 increased duration. With the more damage to poisons, I mean, I believe that it'll still be very powerful to play Assassin. Because they still have poison nodes, and if poison is just inherently good and you're getting good poison nodes and you're getting like the elusive stuff and all that anyways, that is already good on Assassin. I mean, I don't see why it would be like bad, but Pathfinder and like Occultist might just be better now for poison, bearing like non-crit builds. Also Corralitos will be nerfed, but you know, instead of having to run Corralitos, which is a kind of a flask anyways, also they nerfed a bunch of flasks, like the diamond flask is now 100 crit instead of a lucky, so a lot of crit stuff has been nerfed. Yeah, so I think overall poison might actually come out with very interesting new builds, and we might actually start using the poison ailment as an application for a variety of skills and not just the ones that are inherently like, you know, quite overpowered with it, like Blade Blast and Blade Blast. Right. Ailment threshold that we talked about earlier, you know, they're making it so that we can better invest in that, so we'll see how that pans out. Obviously, this is barring like actual gameplay and actual like how much will this be. We don't have exact numbers yet, but let's hope this is going to be enough. They added some utility, they added some icons, which is, you know, super welcome to see in the game, that so you can actually see how strong is your shock on the boss. And this will make it so much more fun to play around with the elements now that you can actually see how much impact they have in a map-to-map and a boss-to-boss fight. I think this is super key to make it so that whenever you are investing in these, like, you know, secondary effects of your skills, that you can see that they're actually impactful or not impactful enough, so maybe you should invest more into them, or maybe they're not worth it. So it allows for better creativity because you can probably assess what it does now. And I really like that. I think this kind of stuff is stuff you do not want to hide from the player. There is no purpose to where you should hide this information from the player at all. I think that that's been a mistake for a long time. And so I'm happy to see this. Trigger effect cost, so now whenever you trigger a skill, it'll cost mana even on cast damage taken. So certain builds might not even be able to cast a skill if you are running 0 mana, right? If you reserve it all the way down and you have very little left. So be very mindful of that. Also, like casting crits, and then I think what's the spell slinger is probably going to be like, you know, the mines with the mana cost. So I don't know how this is going to work. Yeah, don't. Okay, so the spell singer I'm actually just gonna not talk about. I assume they're gonna have some kind of mana cost to it. I'm not sure how it's gonna work out. Maybe it's just gonna cost the reserved mana portion. Yeah, this one I don't know. Let's just wait and see. But I think this is a good thing overall. I do think that triggering skills already has such an upside with circumventing cast speed. And that was always the main drive for trigger gems, is that it allowed you to not only use your attack as your application or your way to cast a skill, which has really good upsides from like life gain and hit and allowing to get fortify and blinding enemies and all sorts of things, and applying EE. There's like all sorts of things this does for a skill that makes it better. So having the mana cost not be a thing as well on top was too big of an upside. So I think trigger gems has been holding them back quite a bit overall, so it's good to see it's going to be interesting to see what they can now do as the design space is opened by nerfing trigger gems this way. Movement skills down here. Smoke Mine is dead as a movement skill. Okay, so this is a place where I feel like, what is even the purpose of a smoke mine, and why do you have this skill as a mine in itself? And because I feel like smoke mine could be so much more interesting. And I mentioned, like, so now it gives you a burst of speed and it gives you a higher smoke. Like the smoke cloud is bigger. So why is it a smoke mine? I mean, I guess you could like do the whole thing. You place the mine somewhere and you smoke and you trigger to it. But even then, like, why does it have to be associated with a mine? I think that is just unnecessary. I think we should call it smoke bomb, and then you get a burst of speed inside of the smoke. And so whenever like you bomb something up and it gives you a good smoke cloud, the whole like, if your utility mobility has the additional need of a trigger, like a two button combo to do something that essentially should just be done in one, I just don't see the point. It has never been fun to play with, and I feel like they could do better with this skill. Just redesign it into a skill that can be used in conjunction with all the other utility skills. Be it just call it a movement skill. Don't make it a mine. I don't understand why it has to be a mine. It is super obnoxious having it as a 9. So yeah, I would love to see a further change to smoke mine and make it a more interesting skill. I do like that it's a larger bomb, because I actually do think that the bomb part of it has always been a really interesting part of smoke mine. I have many times used it as I see a pack of dangerous monsters, I will throw the mine into the pack, and then I will dash to it, right? So yeah, I would like to see, you know, with movement skills in general, I'm okay with them lowering the cooldown and not having them spammable as much. The most important thing with mobility skills is that they feel good to use. Dash early on just feels bad because you can't traverse, like in Act 2, you can't traverse the river. Like, why? It just makes no sense. It's important that it needs to feel good using it without giving you an overpowered amount of mobility. So I think the feel of use and the application of it is much more important than its spammability and its like abusiveness, right? So take away all the abusive stuff and make it really fun to play with. And then players will use these skills and really love them for what they do. And the same thing with like dash and you fight Cirrus. Like, why would you ever use dash when you go through the beam and you get stacks on you? I don't know. Maybe you need to add another skill called vault so you can like jump over things and maybe disjoint your character for like a second. I don't know. Something. Like maybe a vault could still be hit by projectiles, but it avoids like ground effects things. I don't know. I want GDD to explore more on mobility, because I think mobility is something where they're very like, it's very binary. It's like speed, certain distances, spam, 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 and that's like it. There's not like a lot of, yeah. Like there could be more done with it. Second wind, I think, is a good change. It now increases cooldown, but then you get 2 uses of a skill, so you have to choose. Do you want slightly higher cooldown and then 2 uses, or you just want to have lower usage and only 1 use? I think that's a good change. Arcane Search is now better if you're struggling on. I think the Arcane Search change is actually really good. It'll make self-casting when you're not going full like MOM and agnostic and all that. Feel much better, like when you're not stacking mana, because it gives you a flat mana. This will be a big, like, they're hitting the mana stuff left, right, and center, and honestly I don't mind it. I think the mana stuff will find a way back to being very powerful, because the whole shell of mana and building damage and defense and recovery through that whole thing is just very powerful. It's very much like stat stacking. So definitely, I think a balance passes on the mana stuff is fine. Maybe you need to add more there eventually over time. Definitely don't kill the setup, and then we're good. Fortify effect is getting nerfed across the board. That doesn't mean Fortify itself got nerfed, but Fortify effect has been nerfed. So it won't be to the point where you basically get... You click your focus skill and you're immune to damage. That was stupid and shouldn't be a thing. Fortify effect, yeah, nerfed, good thing. Damage multiplier, okay, so this is what I was talking about. Cluster jewels. They've moved fire damage over time multiplier from a prefix to a suffix to be more in line with critical damage, which I think is a great addition. This weapon will never exist in your hands, by the way, because it's super difficult to roll. This thing is like a 1 in 2,000-3,000 roll. This thing is really rare, and then +2. I don't know, dude. Yeah, don't expect to get this, but you will definitely find yourself to having better damage over time weapons early on because of the suffix. Very good. Veiled mods, I think big mistake to add this like annul in there. I believe that this will create another round of you are only going to use, like mainly this is going to be used with block metacraft. Use this, come in until it hits, do like 20 iterations, and I think it is wholly uninteresting, and it creates this we're just back to metacraft block, annul, slam, and go until you hit it. It is just a longer way of deterministic farming that is wholly uninteresting for the majority of players. Yeah, I don't mind that. So this is what I would do if it was me. When I used veil mods on my weapons, I had a 33% chance of hitting. Why? Because there was enough different mods on a given stat that, or a given item, that there was just never a way that I could prevent a 1 in 3 chance. It was nearly impossible. So the way to make this better, if they don't like that you can easily just add a good mod, you add more mods that are veiled. Add more variety, and then if you put a veiled mod on there, you just make it so that you can't always hit movement speed on boots. I mean, just make it so it's just not always obvious what you're gonna get. This right here with having like a random stat removed, I don't know. It's like it makes Betrayal so much less interesting now. I felt like if you could get your Ashling on there, it felt so nice that you, oh, I can maybe improve on my build now. Now you have to like make all this forethought and have all the meta crafting done, or have an item that is specifically just a gamble item. I don't like this one bit. I think you are yeah, we're going back to like old crafting without taking a step forward here. This is literally just a return to how everything was in the past without having learned anything from any of the new stuff you've added. I think this is wholly uninteresting. Okay. Other changes is, let's see here. So they're doing some balance passes. Basically, Elementalists got hit hard on damage. Survivability focus can no longer be stacked to be permanent. Raider lost some onslaught bonus. Big one here, Abyss, with the onslaught on kill, making onslaught a more attractive thing to get on the tree, and in general, like using a silver flask will probably be something that you will see, especially with the nerf to the flask adrenaline node as well. So this is gonna be how you're gonna get your speed back, probably by running a silver potion. A bunch of buffs to underperforming skills. You can look at those yourselves. Pretty good in general. Not much to say. I would say, I mean, a lot of reasonable buffs. Looks pretty cool. Things that they haven't mentioned that I'm a little bit disappointed. No mention. So the other things, I didn't really expect them to mention it. But this has been mentioned by other people. I mean, we've mentioned it last league as well, about the current Atlas system. I would even say that even if... So I think there's like this sentiment going around that, oh, but because you nerfed us, you also have to give us something in return. And I think that whole sentiment is just stupid. Honestly, like, PoE players have gotten power creep after power creep after power creep. There's another sentiment going around that they always balance for the 1%, even though that they've balanced for the casuals for the last 9 years. It's basically been a gift shop followed by another gift shop, barring like 2 or 3 times where they nerfed some things. every single time people complained, oh, they're doing stuff with XP, everything got faster. Like leveling to 100 has only ever become faster. Acquiring items have only ever gotten better. Acquiring currency has only ever gotten better, barring like a few like ups and downs, you know, like it's always been an upwards trend. So this like idea that we need to get something in return, I think is just kind of stupid. The whole point of making this balance pass and reducing the overall top end power is so that they're actually giving us content. And what I mean by that is that you get okay, so whenever you trivialize let's say 50% of your current selection of bosses, they basically don't exist as something for players to overcome. They don't exist as a meaningful challenge or anything to farm really, or to have like as roadblocks that you need to like gear up for and then overcome them and then move on. And I would say even that a lot of these bosses actually stand the test of time in terms of mechanics. And then if they go in and then do balance passes on monster behavior leading up to that, you can actually go in 8-9 years later on its series, and you could probably go through the zone and feel like this is just as alive and it feels just as exciting to go into with all the chaos constructs and Atsiri being Atsiri, and now mobility is harder around her, so the skills will be harder to dodge and it'll feel like more of a real fight. And by that, they're actually giving us content. And I think that is great. So this like, oh, but where's our extra drops because you took away? Well, taking away power also means that you farm a little bit more. It gives you more things to aim for, and I think that's a good thing. You might just want to have everything handed to you, and you might only care about killing Maven, but honestly, this game provides good content from start to finish, and it's why it's such a good game, and I think we should appreciate that. You might be of a different opinion, that's alright, we'll just have to disagree if that is your opinion, that all this earlier stuff doesn't matter. I believe it's why the game has been successful for the last 9 years. However, I do think the Atlas currently is tedious to go through, and if we are going slower, it'll exacerbate the tedium, because I do actually think the current Maven quest and the way we accumulate passives on the Atlas gives us a feeling of it being a necessity to get it before we can move on, and so you're constantly just sitting there waiting, oh, when am I done collecting all these things so I can finally play the game? It is not that fun. I actually think I had more fun with the Atlas in the past, which being the Cirrus Atlas. I will say this though, I think the new fights with the hidden and the feared and all of that, I really like it. I like that you have these endgame goals, and I think it's because they are as exciting as it is to like farm towards Elder and Shaper and all that and keep all that. And I don't actually mind that the regions have meaning, but I do mind the tedium of unlocking all of this. And yeah, and the fact that you feel like, oh, I need to like make sure that my build can take on hidden and that and that and that and that before I can set up my Atlas, because if I can't set up my Atlas, it's pointless to actually play the game. And I think that's a big problem, because one of the most important things about PoE is that it needs to be, for me, PoE is a playground, or it's a place where I can be creative, right? So if I feel like I can't just re-roll into a new build, go through the Atlas a bit, if I always feel like I'm punished by not doing the endgame first, especially for new players as well, it takes away that feeling of being allowed to be creative. And I think that's something that PoE has done so well for so long, and it's kind of losing a bit of that touch. Allowing the player to be creative and not feel like they're getting punished by not doing the super meta thing. So, I think that's something to mention. Because I actually think that the ailment stuff and the nerf to the ailment allows the players to be creative again by having to seek out ways to overcome like the ailment stuff and all of that. Like, how do I not get frozen? It's an important thing to get into the player's mind so when they play through the game. And I think the Atlas kind of like diminishes that. Okay, I think aura stacking is stupid. It's been stupid for 8-9 years now. Everyone saw that it would be a problem in the future. It became a problem in the future, and it's only ever been a growing problem. Again, it's something that attacks creativity. If you come into a map and you felt like, oh, I have this really nice hatred I set up for my character, and then you have an aura button there, yeah, you might as well turn that shit off and put something else on, or just not use it at all. Also, it gives you the most amount of power of anything. That anyone running with an aura bot now will feel the exact same almost as they did before, because it is such a vast and massive power spike. Like, okay, you remove 40% of the damage. If you do 2 to 3 times more damage than, like, okay, and then aura stacking comes in and you're doing 10 times the damage, right? So, compared to a normal character, they're still doing 5 times as much damage as a normal character would do right now, which is plenty to destroy everything. Aura stacking is dumb. Address it already. You can't have these balance passes and not even address it, and not recognize that aura stacking makes party play very binary, because any party play where you don't have an aura stacker feels stupid. And if you ever encounter an aura stacker and you have any kind of aura or anything the aura stacker does, you feel stupid for bringing it. It is dumb, and it destroys creativity. Thank you. That's all for me right now. I'm gonna go stream. Patch notes when? They're coming up soon. I'm looking forward to it. I know this video took longer than I thought, but these are my thoughts. There's a lot more to talk about. This will be an ongoing thing, and balance. I mean, I think they're doing really well in terms of moving the game forward. They're trying to make it so that you're not getting punished too much on the early stuff. They're trying to like add in the creativity from like utilizing utility better again, to where they made it too trivial to circumvent. They're trying to overcome Flask spamming. I like all of that. I might not agree that it's the best way on all fronts, the way they're addressing it, but they're taking steps toward it, and I really appreciate it. That's it for this video. I will see you guys tomorrow for another one. I think tomorrow will be the patch notes one, and I'll give you a quick pass if I can. I'll see you guys later. Bye!